I'm a full-time professional artist. I've painted upwards of 600 paintings throughout my career. I've been doing this for 10 years, and I have really struggled with varnishing. There is so much misinformation on the internet about varnishing. Oh my gosh, it's all conflicting. Like, one artist will tell you that you have to use this certain brush or this certain type of varnish or apply it in a very specific way or wait a certain length of time in between coats and all of this different stuff. And it's like, which tips are the right ones and which ones are the wrong ones? You don't want to ruin your painting that you've worked so hard on. It is so confusing and frustrating. And so over the years, I've sifted through all of this noise on the internet. I've tried out so many different things, but I've found some things that work and some things that don't. And so in this video, I'm going to share with you the 4 biggest lies that I've found online about varnishing, so that way you won't make the mistakes that I did. The first and biggest lie is that you need to varnish your acrylic paintings in the first place. I mean, honestly, you do not need to varnish your acrylic paintings. There are some instances that you might want to varnish your acrylic painting, like if you used mixed media and it's the type of media that might rub off or brush off, like if it was charcoal or some sort of pastel, things like that. But if you're just using acrylic paint, it's going to dry and set up on there just fine, and you can clean it off later without having varnish on there. I actually made a video about how I cleaned one of my acrylic paintings that was unvarnished. If you'd like to watch it, it's in the description area. But the thing is that a lot of people think that you must varnish because it's going to be the only way that your painting will last the test of time. And if you're going to be painting something that maybe in 300 or 400 years is going to be in a museum, then yeah, you probably want to varnish. But most of us, we're not making art that is going to be in a museum one day. We all want to think so like kind of pie in the sky about our art. Like, yes, I'm going to be such a famous artist, but most of us, 99% of us, probably you watching this video, probably me, let's get real here, our art is not going to need to last for hundreds and hundreds of years. Another lie is that you must use an isolation coat if you are varnishing an acrylic painting. Now, what an isolation coat is it creates a barrier between your acrylic paint and the varnish. And so if you are using removable varnish, if you want to be able to remove it at some point later to clean the painting, like, I don't know why you would need to, I guess if it was out in a dust storm, I don't know. But if you would need to do this, when you remove that layer of varnish, then you have that barrier in between it and the paint, which is good. And theoretically, this is a good thing to do, but it's definitely not necessary. And I've never used an isolation coat when I'm varnishing any of my work, and it's all turned out just fine. Now, if you are thinking about the really, really long-term longevity of your piece, like if you're selling your work for $3,000, $4,000, more than that even, if you think that you are going to be displaying your work for the next 500 years in art museums, then you might want to use an isolation coat. But otherwise, it's just busy work. It's stuff that you really don't need to do. The next piece of information is brush versus foam roller. Now, there's a lot of artists out there, and even the bottles of the different varnishes, that say do not ever use a foam roller and only use a brush. Now, my experience is the exact opposite. Every time I use one of these things, I have horrible lines that come up and they dry like that on my painting. It just looks awful. The sheen of the varnish is just hideous. And no matter how carefully I do this, no matter how lightly I brush or how quickly I brush, slowly I brush, all of the different tips online that tell you how to apply it with one of these, they all have ruined all the paintings that I've ever tried with, so I don't do that. I use a foam roller. Now, the bad thing about the foam roller is that sometimes it can create bubbles, especially if you have a lot of varnish on here and it's really thick and you've poured a lot of it on the painting and you're spreading it out with this. You can create bubbles in there, and if the bubbles don't dissipate, then they could appear on the surface of the canvas, and that's really bad. And this is why people say to not use the foam roller. But what I've learned is I can use the foam roller on there very slowly and gently, and it does leave a few bubbles, but I found that within reason, like within the first minute or so of applying it, you can rework it. And this is another lie that you will come across online, that you cannot rework the varnish at all once you apply it, that it's a very touchy medium. And in my opinion, that's just not true. You can rework it as long as you rework it within 1 minute or so of applying it to begin with. So if you're rolling on an entire layer on, let's say, a 24 by 30 inch size canvas, by the time you get finished rolling it on, you can go back over and go over it one more time very lightly, and that helps get rid of any of the bubbles that are on there from the roller. But also over time, it ends up just leveling out as it dries, because all of these varnishes back here, they're self-leveling and they're made to kind of dissipate some of the minor areas that are unlevel in there as they're drying. And so it's something to kind of experiment with. And if this is your very first time varnishing, or you've varnished before and had a lot of difficulty, I would suggest watching this tutorial. I have all of the information on there about how I use the foam roller, what different types of varnish that I like, everything like that. You'll learn lots in this tutorial. All right, thank you so much for watching. See you next time.